Alright, right now as I'm recording this, it is 12:49 a.m. But as I released the video yesterday, I was going through the comments and I saw a guy on YouTube. His name is Dominic Taluki. He commented, "You're my favorite MMA YouTuber right now. Great content, man." And also, just recently I'd gotten a comment from another guy on TikTok. It was a private message and he had said, "Bro, I've been following the sport for quite some time. I can safely say you and Luke Thomas have the best MMA content. Keep it up, bro. You have something special." Whenever I feel like slacking off, I think about these messages, and I owe you guys. I'm not going to let you down. For expressing these sentiments, I have to work very hard. Even though I'm just a goofy dude who likes making these internet videos, it's getting to mean something a little bit more now, and I feel a sense of responsibility to you folks, so I'm going to be grinding like crazy. I talk about how I'm like a 22-year-old man with no community and I'm out of school and there's like nowhere for me to... We're building the community and you guys are my family. So I'm not going to let off at all. Like I'm going to be working triple time now because I understand that like this is becoming so much larger than I ever thought it would get. 900 subscribers. I really can't believe it. Thank you guys so much for sticking along with me and for paying attention to the content that I release. I love you guys so much. I can't even put it into words. 3 orders of business, okay? I have a Discord. People have asked for a Beowulf MMA Discord. I don't really even use Discord like that. I'm going to put the invite link inside of the comment section. You guys feel free to join up if that's something that you like to do. I'll probably pop in there every once in a while. Maybe we'll use that for the fight companions. I don't know. There's endless possibilities, I guess. But yeah, Discord, Beowulf MMA Discord, that's up right now. Also, there's been a new broadcasting deal that the UFC has signed, not with Netflix, Paramount. And what this means is that, well, firstly, the ESPN deal that they had signed 6 years ago, which is going to expire, it guaranteed $3.5 billion for the organization to use within this time frame. It ended up being like $550 million per year. This new one is $7 billion for 7 years. So twice the amount of money annually from our broadcasting sponsor, which means bigger events. The Sphere card, for reference, costs like $20 million. That means that there's a potential to host 50 different events that are as large and as well put together as the Sphere card, if we're getting $1 billion a year for that. But that goes into the other part of the deal, which is 43 guaranteed events, 30 fight nights, 13 numbered events. We still get a lot of money to play with, though. And oh yeah, the biggest deal is that the pay-per-view model is disappearing. Paramount has their subscription service called Paramount Plus. I guess they have like movies on there or whatever. You're going to be able to watch UFC fights through Paramount Plus instead of paying. I really don't even know what the pay-per-view breakdown was because I'll be forthcoming and saying I really hope that the FBI doesn't get me for this. I've never paid for a UFC event. I know that we like are supposed to stand in solidarity with like the fighters as far as like increasing their pay and stuff, but yeah, I've never thrown money at this organization as far as like watching the fights. It's like, remember like public access television? Oh, that's a horrible example. It's kind of like if they were making you pay to watch Dragon Tales or like Word Girl or Super Y back in the day or like Arthur. PBS was free, you know? You're never paying to watch Arthur. It doesn't really matter to me who we're under consignment with. It doesn't matter if the president is black or white. It doesn't matter if it's raining or snowing or shining. I'm gonna steal these cards. But this has the potential to be really big for the fighters. Maybe instead of 12-12, they're going to be fighting for 14-14. If anything, that extra $500 million per year that the organization is going to be getting from Paramount, it should help them out, you know? Whether or not I pay $20 a month for that subscription that I don't want to pay for. And then, yeah, the final piece of information before we get on through the picks is going to be they ruined the UFC Apex. I wish I had started doing this like 3 years earlier. That way I could have potentially made a change or got more people to think differently about the way they perceive the Apex. There's nothing wrong with the Apex. The fact that there's not that much sitting room inside of it, that's what makes it so endearing. You can hear the punches. You can hear the coaches screaming at the athletes. You can hear the winces from the fighters after body shots land. It's a special environment. The UFC Apex is the best venue as it is right now. It does not need to be changed. The change that they're making is they're expanding the venue so that it can seat 5,000 to 10,000 people. They're essentially creating a second T-Mobile arena. And why? For what? You're taking all the personality away from the Apex. Makes me so sad. I don't know if you guys also fit in this bill. I just quit a job in California that paid me $16 an hour. whenever all was said and done after income taxes were taken, I was making around $13 an hour. Whenever the UFC comes to a city that I'd be able to drive to, one, I'd be wasting at least like $30 in gas just making the trip, right? And I mean, that's not a big deal, but I'd be paying the $200 or $300 or whatever, and I'd be sitting with our Lord and Savior up at the top rung of the entire arena. In order to get any type of decent seats, that's at least like $500 or $600. It doesn't make any sense to me. Unless this YouTube stuff pops, I'm never going to be able to go to a UFC live event. So them adding those extra 5,000 to 10,000 seats inside of the Apex, whenever logistically it doesn't even make sense for me to drive out to Vegas, and then you'd be paying around like $500, $600 for a seat that would make the event watchable. It doesn't really seem like that good of a deal to me. That might just be me though. I'm sure that a lot of you guys who are in a better financial situation probably are excited about that. They're a bit more local to the Apex, but it really doesn't make a difference to me. I feel like they just ruined the Apex for a few extra dollars. Hopefully this intro doesn't stretch on for too long. I timestamp the videos just so that you guys can skip through whatever you don't want to watch. We have a really huge card to talk about. This is an amazing event. UFC 319 Duplessis versus Chimaev is going to be happening this Saturday, August 16th at United Center in Chicago. I thought this would be the first time that we would be having a card in Chicago in the United Center, but UFC 238 happened here, and that was a while back. So we're going to be returning to Bilal Muhammad's backyard, and that's him with the Chirac Savages right there. I googled a photo of the arena and then the fabled Cook County Jail, and I noticed that they're styled pretty much exactly the same. That arena for sure needs like a makeover because it looks crusty, musty, dusty, but we're not going to be seeing the outside at any point. It's all about what's on the inside, baby. Speaking of what's going on the inside, the only reason why I know about the Cook County Jail is because of this interview that I saw with Rico Reckless on Vlad TV, and he was talking about this thing called Savage Life. I'm getting kind of sick to my stomach just thinking about it. Let's just talk about the early prelims. Hopefully nobody gets Savage Lifed on this card. I think I'm going to be doing away with the canceled fight graveyard just because it takes up a little bit of time at the very beginning of the video. I could just go through it as we're talking about the different matchups, what fell through and the changes that were made. I could just talk about it whenever we're on the slide. The first fight that we're going to be looking at though is going to be Idiris Alibi or Alibi. This kind of reminds me of the Rainbow Six Siege operator Alibi. This dude is from Kazakhstan. He's going to be fighting with Joseph Morales, who's an ex-UFC veteran. He was cut after he got smashed by Davison Figueiredo, my homie, mythical fighter, flyweight Davison Figueiredo. This is going to be the tough finale for the flyweight division. Who doesn't love a good Kazakh prospect? We love Kazakhstan fighters no matter the weight class. The fact that this is a flyweight fight, it just makes it all the more merry for the fact that we're probably going to get a guy who deserves to be in the UFC, who has finishing capabilities as he's displayed on The Ultimate Fighter against a fighter named Roybert Echeverria. He scored a flying knee. This is the only fighter between the two who scored a TKO finish. Joseph Morales did win via submission, and that was against a dude named Eduardo Enrique. I'm just mentioning their names now because we're probably never going to hear about them since they lost in The Ultimate Fighter. They deserve to be mentioned somewhere. Idiris Alibi, he defeated this guy named Furkatbek Yukabov. He defeated this guy named Furkatbek Yukabov by decision in the quarterfinals before he fought with Roybert and then finished him by a knee. He ran out of the cage and he asked Dana White for a bonus. It was so funny. I like his personality for one, this Alibi fellow. I think that he could be a household name in this division if he has good performances behind this personality. I wanted to see more of Alibi's fights, so I googled his name and I went onto YouTube to see if I could find some full fights of him from a different promotion. I was able to find something from an organization called Niza FC. He fought this dude named Edelson Santos, and he showed a lot of skills in the striking. His grappling looked really good, timing his takedowns really well off of the offense of his opponent in this one. Boxing looked really nice too, and he was timing some really good knees. The first knee that he had landed flush, it cut his opponent. The second one dropped him so he could score a first round finish in that fight. Alibi looks like a serious prospect. Joseph Morales was cut from the UFC after consecutive losses to Daiko Davison Figueiredo whenever he was going by Daiko at flyweight instead of Deus de Guerra. And then he lost this pretty uneventful split decision to another fighter named Eric Shelton. Both of these fights happened in 2018 and then he left the promotion. He went to Cage Warriors. He became champion there, I believe. He fought with this dude named Anthony Doe. And in all of those other fights, since they were on Fight Pass, I was able to watch those too. He struggles in the area of takedown defense. He was getting absolutely mauled by Deiveson Figueiredo, but I mean, dude, it happens. Deiveson Figueiredo was such a beast at flyweight, man. He then graduated to Uriah Faber's A1 contest, which, I mean, there's some nepotism going on here because he was part of Team Alpha Male for pretty much his entire MMA career. Another thing to note is that I had mentioned before that he had scored a submission win over this guy named Eduardo Enrique in the quarterfinals of the Tough season that just happened. But in the semifinals of his bracket, he fought this dude named Emmanuel Rodriguez, and the general consensus is that he robbed this person, that he was getting dominated in the second and in the third, outstruck in the second round, wrestled in the third round, which, I mean, I believe it, and he still ended up winning a decision. Another tendency that I noticed out of Joseph Morales is that he has a very strong proclivity to dip his head, which the knee is going to be set up for Alibi without him having to do pretty much anything to land it. Alibi, he has great potential for this division, and he has no losses. He's going to do something cool. I think Idiris is going to win via round 1 TKO, and it should be sound. Shout out to homie Leslo. This fight should be an absolute barn freezer. We have Karine Silva at number 11. Her fight with JJ Aldrich at rank 14, I think it was, fell through. She's going to be rematching a woman named Dione Barbosa, which she had fought before in a promotion called Katana FC 7 years ago. JJ Aldrich in the position of Dione Barbosa was likely going to be a decision ending, but now we have a short notice Dione Barbosa, and she got chopped up chicken in her last fight with Miranda Maverick that also happened on short notice whenever she stepped in for Tracy Cortez. I think that was a decision, but Dione Barbosa didn't look like she came ready to fight. Neither did Maverick, though. That was a sparring match. I really don't like Miranda Maverick's fight style. It's like she's sparring all the time. Barbosa, she has no quality wins. She's only stopped a single fight in the UFC versus Diana Belbita, and that was an arm triangle. And then she's decision Ernesta Karačketa, which is a pure kickboxer, and she's lost to Miranda Maverick in between those two wins. And yeah, this fight is a rematch, like I had said. The first fight happened 7 years ago. Karine Silva won a decision over Dione Barbosa in this promotion. Silva is good enough at grappling to get submission wins over low-level crooks in women's flyweight. She Z-locked Ketlin Souza and destroyed her knee. She Darce choked Poliana Botello and guillotined Marina Moraz. She actually went on a crazy submission streak at the very beginning. Marina Moraz was dominating the clinch, and then she moved away from the clinch and got taken down, and then she got guillotined. And that was a foreseeable path to victory that JJ Aldrich could have taken in this fight, but she's really not any longer a factor in any of this. Vivian Araujo was the last woman to beat Karine Silva, and Karine Silva actually did look pretty good for moments of that fight through the first and second round. Her striking seemed to have improved a lot, and she was very active in going for takedowns and controlling on the ground. But Araujo just kept herself safe and returned to her feet whenever she would get taken down. Karine Silva burned out her gas tank, attacking subs and also going for takedowns, and she ended up pulling guard 3 times in one round in the third. That's what lost her the fight. Whenever she was fresh, she was throwing some really good shots. She was landing some hard punches. Her boxing actually looked like it had come a long way from the other performances that I'd watched on Fight Pass. Karine Silva, she looked like a pretty decent striker in her last fight before she gassed out completely. This should be easy peasy, and this is the right set of circumstances for Karine Silva to notch a finish as well. A short notice, Dione Barbosa is going to be about half as dangerous as she otherwise would be, which is not really that dangerous in general. Barbosa, she has IQ problems, and she gave Macy Barber rounds for free by shooting takedowns and pulling guillotines. She didn't look too bad in that fight, but she just grappled whenever she shouldn't have. Silva's always going to have the grappling on lock, but the striking in the Araujo fight looked really not bad, and that's what's going to make me pick her to win this decision. This should be the only boring fight of the entire card, but hopefully it delivers still. I'm going to select Karine Silva to win a decision here. Absolute barn freezer. We got some really big names on the early prelims after the first 2 fights there. We have Bryan Battle versus Nursulton Ruziboev happening at middleweight. Bryan Battle, he's really made a mess of things concerning his hype and the trajectory of his career after his last weight miss and his performance after the weight miss against Randy Brown. He's been demoted to Pooh Bear again. 185, Bryan Battle is Pooh Bear. 170, Bryan Battle is the Butcher. He's no longer the Butcher anymore. He's Pooh Bear again since he's back up at 185. And it looks like he'll never be able to make 170 again. His last weight miss was 4 pounds, and he clinched Randy Brown to death to win a split decision that many people believe that he robbed, even including myself. I didn't think that he'd win that fight, but I'd picked him to win that week, so I had Gene Matsumoto level indifference towards that decision. I was just happy to be right. Bryan Battle's superpower at 170 was that he was bigger and harder hitting than most welterweights, and we're about to see him get nerfed for returning back to 185. Nursulton is not going to have that crazy of a reach advantage. It's only 1 inch, but That compounded with his height is going to make it so that he's going to struggle with the distance and open range, because Bryan Battle did in general against Randy Brown, and he was getting touched up before he started clinching so much. Randy Brown has a similar reach to both of those guys. I think it goes Randy Brown 76-inch reach, Bryan Battle 77-inch reach, and then Nursulton Ruziboev 78-inch reach. They're all relative to each other, and they're very tall, each of them. Randy Brown was kind of torturing Bryan Battle with the jab and the movement as well. Nursulton Ruziboev does a pretty good job with both of these things, but instead of lateral movement, Nursulton Ruziboev is really good at fading in and out of range. And Ruziboev can totally get away with pulling straight back or exiting out of the pocket linearly because he is so tall. It's really confusing to me how Bryan Battle, he wasn't dehydrated in there. It's not like that was a botched weight cut. He just didn't bother cutting those 4 pounds. I'd watched his MMA Hour interview where he talked about the reason why he missed weight, and he basically just said it was because he didn't feel like it. And he still had a really close life and death fight with this dude, and he was getting touched up before he started clinch spamming. Ruziboev is going to frustrate Bryan Battle with the range. He's going to be moving in and advancing to land jabs and straight shots, pulling back just in time to dodge these check hooks or whatever offense returns to him. And in the process of pulling back, one thing that I noticed that Nursulton does really well is just plant and fire. We're going to see some really hard right hands land. Really nice shots got through for him against Bruno Ferreira, and he ended up putting Ferreira down with the right hand off of a kick that he caught. The dude is so tall, he barely even needed to change levels to grab the kick. And then he just shot the right hand over the top and the fight was over. His frame makes it so that the void is super tight and the distance can always be closed. All it takes is one step from Nursulton. Battle has experience fighting with rangy guys like Randy Brown, who did really nasty things to him. He didn't want to stand up battle with. And then also Kevin Gisette in Paris, who despite his reach advantages, Kevin Gisette, he's no longer even in the UFC anymore. He doesn't fight long. A guy like Kevin Gisette doesn't know how to use his body and to maintain range at the distance that would most suit him to fight in. Distance management hasn't proven to be an issue with Nursulton Ruziboev, unless you know how to wrestle like Joaquin Buckley, and we have no reason to assume that Bryan Battle is as good of an offensive wrestler as Joaquin Buckley is, because he's never displayed that. Defensively, he's also getting punished by dudes like Rinat Fakhretdinov, who were able to do whatever they wanted with Bryan Battle. Historically, I looked through the record of Bryan Battle as well. He lost to Billy Elikana, who used to be a middleweight back whenever, I think they were both amateurs whenever they fought. But yeah, that sounds pretty much right. Billy Elikana is the exact style that would give Bryan Battle fits. I think that Nursulton Ruziboev is going to start tagging this guy up, and he's not going to have any answers for it, because he's not going to be able to grapple him, and the clinch isn't going to work either. So I'm going to predict a Nursulton Ruziboev round 2 TKO in this fight. We're going to move on to the next one. That'll be Edson Barbosa versus Drakkar Klose, and Edson. This is going to be the first time that I'm going to watch Edson Barbosa fight up at 155 since I started watching the sport. He was a featherweight for the entire duration of me paying attention to the UFC up until now. I really thought that Drakkar Klose had been KO'd more times, since his most recent fight was a KO loss to Joel Alvarez, and then also that crazy highlight comeback clip from Beneil Dariush. And that was kind of from back in the day whenever we all thought that he would be a nightmare matchup for Islam Makhachev, Beneil Dariush. Klose's last loss, being as brutal of a KO as it was, may have softened him up for Edson, but Father Time has done a very large number on Barbosa. And to me, the real question is, how much longer does Edson Barbosa have before he just starts getting knocked out a ton? He was graciously given Lerone Murphy, who's going to be fighting up this card to fight with, his last time at featherweight, and he lost that fight, but Lerone Murphy isn't a finisher. He gave Edson Barbosa a polite beating, which was mostly just jabs and low kicks. Brazilians, they never retire on time, and you can count on that like you can count on the sun rising tomorrow. Klose's last win was against a Brazilian in Brazil. Joaquim Silva was this guy's name. He fought with Drakkar Klose. Drakkar won this fight in the clinch. I think he would be controlling Edson Barbosa mainly in this zone as well. The leg kicks of Joaquim Silva in this fight with Drakkar Klose in open range were working, but Edson Barbosa doesn't throw those strikes anymore. He was touching the calf and thigh of Lerone Murphy in his last fight, but then moved away from this offense. It's a jab. If you stick a jab on Edson Barbosa, he kind of crumples. And Edson Barbosa isn't going to have the nuclear option to finish a fight with Drakkar Klose like Joel Alvarez did. It's going to be an unpopular take to side with Klose here, because as he gets closer to retirement, a lot of people are going to want to see Edson Barbosa take these dubs and what we feel like are going to be winnable fights. But win or lose, we're going to see Edson Barbosa fight again. I just don't really believe in him anymore is the thing. He doesn't have the output or stopping power of a weight-bullying 145er. Drakkar Klose isn't anything special himself, but his strengths are Edson's weaknesses. There's always a chance of a Hail Mary wheel kick landing, but everyone is on high alert when it comes to not getting hit with one of those whenever they're fighting Edson Barbosa, because we've all seen the clips so many times. Edson doesn't really set up his shots anymore, too. Just big explosions at random moments, but they're never like fight ending. In the Lerone Murphy fight, he was just ripping body kicks at random moments, and they were being tanked, but they were solid connections. Big right hands or big liver hooks, but they weren't ever followed up by anything, and they were never really set up. They were just kind of launched at moments where you did see the opening. And I would say overall, Edson Barbosa has a lot more mileage than experience, and that's going to make him less crafty of a veteran and more of a chinny one. In any event, I think that Drakkar Klose is going to win a decision here. He's going to dominate in the clinch, probably land some good shots on Edson Barbosa. These guys at 155 are going to be hitting with a little bit more power than the 145ers. Maybe he has a speed advantage. I don't think he was going to have a power advantage. I don't think either of these guys are going to be finishing each other. Close via decision. That's going to take us up to the prelims. We have the O-Block Goons here. Rest in peace, Fredo Santana. The first fight on the prelims is going to be Chase Hooper versus Alexander Hernandez. This is a lightweight fight. MMA math is unreliable, but Hernandez going to a 3-round decision in his fight with Kurt Holoba in his last fight, and then Holoba getting subbed in round 1 by Jordan Levitt whenever Chase Hooper is a better grappler than both Levitt and Holoba, looks grim for Alexander. Chase Hooper is going to have the option to do something pretty crazy on the floor whenever the fight inevitably gets there, because all of Chase Hooper's fights, they have a grappling exchange at one point. But I'm looking forward to Hooper showing us some striking. I think he kind of knows that he's there to knock this guy out. In a perfect world, this dude doesn't have to use his jiu-jitsu at all. This is part of the UFC trying to make Hooper into a prospect at this weight class. The path that they put him on is so that he can win and showcase his abilities as a harder hitting and generally better fighter at 145. This is part of the UFC trying to make Hooper into a prospect at this new weight class. The path that they've been putting him on at lightweight is so that he can win fights and showcase his abilities as a harder hitting and a generally better fighter at 155 than he was at 145. Hernandez going to a split decision with Austin Hubbard is also not one of my favorite things in the world. Chase Hooper can do this, and he likely does. Hernandez is a solvable puzzle, and he can only defeat grappling specialists that are on their last legs like Holoba or Miller. In the past, strikers on the level of Billy Q, Bill Algeo, and Damon Jackson were comfortably winning fights on the cards or even knocking out Alexander Hernandez. I'd even venture to say that Chase Hooper is relative to each of these fighters I've mentioned in terms of his skill in the stand-up. Maybe not better than them, but maybe he hits a little bit harder. Granted, those are 145ers again. Both are ex-featherweights. Hernandez keeps alternating divisions since nothing really seems to stick. He wins a fight at lightweight, he loses a fight at lightweight, goes down to 145, wins and then loses there, tries 155 again. At lightweight though, Hernandez was beaten up by grapplers like Hanato and Moises, and for this reason, I think that there's a Hooper W incoming, and I think that he's not going to need to use grappling for it. He will knock out Alexander Hernandez in round 1. Next is a fight between Jessica Andrade at number 5 and then Loopy Godinez at number 11. This will be happening at women's strawweight. Tabitha Ricci is one of the best cage controlling pressure fighters at women's strawweight. So for Loopy Godinez to have won a decision against her, that's a big accomplishment in this weight class because I don't see her losing again anytime soon. Andrade, she may be cooked because she's planning to dehydrate again after she dabbled at 125, but it seemed like she wasn't exactly cut out for that weight class because she was subbed by Jasmine Jasudavicius. This one from Jasmine, it came through an RNC. Godinez is really good in the clinch. She can advance the clinch to try to get trips and back takes and then get subs the same way. She did this against Elise Reed. 2025 Andrade is a fighter that you think is either already or getting close to the age of 40 with how she's been fighting lately, but this was just her at an improper weight class. Godinez seems to have stayed dialed in for the entire time that Jessica has just been kind of experimenting and probably what's the most important part of her career at 30 years old. The first takedown is going to dictate the outcome of this fight in my opinion. Godinez will either get stuffed and beat up in the center of the cage, or she'll stay on the clinch and then chain wrestle to try to get the fight down to the ground. If she does end up taking the back or getting the fight to the floor, she has the ability to sub Jessica Andrade down there, just because Jessica Andrade's submission defense hasn't proven to be the best lately. Maybe we are overlooking the fact that Jessica does have some more fights left in her. She also hits really hard at 115 pounds as well. Loopy Godinez, she did lose to a 39-year-old Angela Hill, and she struggled with the physicality of Verna Jandiroba, as well as the grappling of Mackenzie Dern too. Jessica is going to be too strong to allow herself to get tied up by Loopy Godinez, and she couldn't tie up weaker girls who hit less hard Loopy, so just for this weekend, I'm going to say that the Andrade method is unpatched, and that she's going to win via round 2 TKO. The next fight is going to be Gerald Meerschaert versus Michal Oleksiejczuk. This will be happening at middleweight. The GM3 hype is just a meme at this point. On Saturday, he's going to be duking it out with somebody imbued with the power of the Fighting Nerds plot armor, and this is going to be right after he lost a really bad decision to Brad Tavares. Oleksiejczuk actually looked like a pretty good fighter against Cedric Dumas, but I mean, that is Cedric Dumas. As I go through the footage of Oleksiejczuk, I've noticed that he's had some pretty decent finishing capabilities for some time, and is only vulnerable to getting finished by dudes with explosive power or guys who have a really stark speed advantage of him with wiry pop, like Kevin Holland and also Michal Pereira. And they got wins over Oleksiejczuk whenever they were still surging prospects at this new weight class. But it's not like Oleksiejczuk doesn't have good performances to his name, where he's like scored finishes as well even. He's beaten Njokuani, he's beaten Cody Brundage, and also Cedric Dumas, who we've just mentioned. And in a way, he kind of fraud checked Shara Bullet too. Shara Bullet was getting active from bottom positions whenever they started wrestling in that fight with elbows, and he was cutting Oleksiejczuk off of the back. But Oleksiejczuk was freely wrestling this guy. And on top of that, he didn't get finished either. And Shara Bullet looked like he was going to be a prolific finisher for this weight class. He couldn't knock out Oleksiejczuk. Meerschaert has just been looking really bad lately. He lost that decision to Brad Tavares. He didn't look good in that fight. And historically, whenever Oleksiejczuk encounters a non-threatening striker that he enjoys a speed and power advantage over, he's able to stuff takedowns a lot easier as the fight progresses. He usually wins those fights, and I think he's going to be able to stuff takedowns and shuck off Gerald Meerschaert's attempts at wrestling a lot easier as the fight progresses, and he's doing more damage to him. Gerald has been gassing out lately in like a round and some change. 7-8 minutes is all it takes for Gerald Meerschaert to round and some change. 7-8 minutes is all it takes for Gerald Meerschaert to look like half of the fighter that he is whenever he starts out. I trust in Oleksiejczuk's finishing ability, especially now that he's under a new camp. I really hope that this fight doesn't go the distance. GM3 is closing in on 60 pro fights, and that's a big moment. If he loses this one, he's going to be 37-20, so he's 3 fights away. Oleksiejczuk is getting some pretty gracious matchmaking here, and he wins these type of fights, so I'm going to predict that he wins via round 1 KO over Gerald Meerschaert. At the top of these prelims, we have King Green versus Diego Ferreira at lightweight. Mateusz Rebecki was like the big asterisk. Whenever I was concerning myself with who would win this fight, I placed a lot of value on that Mateusz Rebecki win from Diego Ferreira at the time that he got it. Let me just also preface by saying that I've met King Green in real life. I don't just be like hanging out with him and stuff, but at my MMA gym, I could just go there and see him at random chance. He trains there all the time. I've said hello to him on numerous occasions. We have a photo. Mateusz Rebecki is about half as good as I actually thought he was at the time of Diego Ferreira beating him. It's less scary for me to predict that King Green wins this fight after the Chris Duncan matchup where Mateusz Rebecki got his freaking butt whooped. The win that Diego Ferreira got over Michael Johnson is a better aging win than the one that he got over Mateusz Rebecki. And that MJ win, it is still pretty Zaza the way he clubbed him with that overhand. And that's because Michael Johnson is so goated. But it's not like Green isn't also goated too. He's had some really nice performances in the past. He's just been chinned 2 times. And in the middle of these 2 losses, he's taken a loss to, the next big thing in the weight class. I'm talking about Paddy Pimblett. And people are arguing that that guy should get a title shot. People hyper-focus on the losses of King Green in his career as of late. But remember the way that he flatlined KGD in like 30 seconds? He was even doing a good job against Drew Dober before he got caught. Hack Paras, that was a clean performance. And before then, he had KO'd Ali Quina. And again, that was a really good performance. Fiziev robbed this guy. People still make the case for King Green having won that fight against Rafael Fiziev. Aside from a chin which is diminished, there's no way that he didn't lose some durability in that fight with Jalen Turner, which it was 100% the fault of unattentive reffing. He got caught, but he took way too much damage. What was the ref doing? I still don't think that King Green lacks any technical skill. The range of Jalen Turner, that's a problem for most people in this division. He would have finished Renato Moicano if he chased a finish. And Hoofy is very tricky. Gregor Gillespie, he got a cheeky KO over Diego in 2021, but that's because he effectively out-wrestled Diego first, and he made him very tired with his grappling. Bobby is still a slick striker. He'll be more down the pocket exchange with Diego Ferreira instead of serving his chin up on a silver platter and fading straight back out of range. Johnson was trying to be all elusive and trick Diego, and he got clipped. If Green gets KO'd, it will be him standing chest to chest in the phone booth with Diego. Diego is a vicious striker, but not necessarily a one-shot KO guy outside of his fight with the Menace. And it's not like Michael Johnson is the big durability guy, because he's gotten flatlined twice, once by Diego, another time by Josh Emmett, and he got Hotel Rwanda'd by Justin Gaethje. This isn't like a lamb to slaughter matchup that a lot of people are making this out to be for King Green. I think he can totally do this, and he will. Green is going to win a masterful decision against Diego Ferreira in Chicago, and that is my prediction for this fight. We move up to the main card now, and this is 100% going to be my face if we watch Dricus tap like a chicken after I spent the last 2 years of my life glazing him. The first fight up the main card is going to be a flyweight match between Tim Elliott at number 11 and Kai Asakura at number 15. This is going to be a pretty straightforward chain of events, no matter how the fight ends up going. We have a general idea of how each of these fighters are going to approach the matchup. and the potential outcomes of this fight. Kai Asakura, he's a super mega kickboxing man from Japan, and he didn't get to showcase any of this because he was too busy not defending the body triangle and getting sunned by Alexandre. This was kind of out of his hands as well. They brought Kai Asakura on board at a time where the most recent title challenger to fight Pantoja before him in the year 2024 was Steve Erceg. Last year was kind of like a GTA Online money glitch for Pantoja, and Asakura didn't even get completely shafted out of this deal because he did snag a number 15 ranking for his troubles. And if we're dissecting this performance, all he really did was land a flying knee to the chest of Pantoja that was a little bit scary. He didn't have any effective moments in striking on the feet with the boxing. That knee that I was just mentioning before, it got caught by Pantoja and he got single legged off of it. And then he got rear naked choked. Tim Elliott is going to wrestle. Kai Asakura couldn't wrestle whenever he debuted, and that's the thing to weigh here. Is Kai still only a kickboxer? Or can he stuff a shot at this point? Or if he gets his back taken, can he break the body triangle? Does he chin Tim Elliott? I don't think so. This guy has more swag, but we're dealing with a flyweight rebellious to Spain. Tim Elliott is going to be an American hero like Henry Ford or like Guy Fieri come this Saturday. However much better Kai Asakura has gotten at grappling, Tim Elliott has already beaten Tagir Ulanbekov, and in my opinion, I do not believe that Kai Asakura will be able to time his defense of these grappling entries, that Tim is going to be timing himself while Kai is strictly trying to knock him out, because that's how he wins this fight. That's not a secret either. Kai Asakura has to knock out this guy to win. And Tim Elliott doesn't really get KO'd like that, so I can see a Tim Elliott round 2 submission unfolding and a linear progression of Kai Asakura's skills as a grappler being displayed here. And whenever I say linear progression, I mean the line's doing this. Like he's going to be dead in the water as soon as that first double leg is shot. Next we have Jared Cannonier at number 8 versus Michael Venom Page at number 15. This is going to be some middleweight violence. Venom Page, he was a massive welterweight, and I imagine him to be at least the same level of striker that Robert Whittaker is up a weight class. And let's talk about the Robert Whittaker fight. Whittaker dominated Cannonier with less range and by being generally less tricky than MVP has displayed that he is and is going to be in this fight. Michael Page, he layers feints and he will win by making Cannonier gun shy to attack through them. Cannonier's only path to victory is to go first and to show no respect for Michael Venom Page from bell 1 all the way up until whenever this fight ends. But historically, Jared Cannonier has never really fought mean like this, and it's equally risky to take this approach that he would need to in order to win, since nobody knows what MVP will do at any given moment. Am I missing something? People are liking Jared in this matchup, and it seems to me like this fight is nearly impossible for him to win at 41 years old. MVP has great setups, and Jared Cannonier isn't slick enough of a counter striker to parry an entry and land clean, or to catch MVP on the exit. He also doesn't come forward until later into a fight whenever he either has a big moment or gets frustrated or doesn't feel a KO threat. MVP has so many different methods of hurting people, and he'll find something that will do the job to create a rocked moment for himself, and then after that he's going to do something funny like... I could see this fight being MVP repeating the procedure of timing a well-placed blitz with his right hand, landing clean, exiting, and then emoting, and then doing the same thing on a recurring basis until the fight is over, like he did against Holland and Char Bullet. There's less stopping power on MVP at 185, but it's not like he isn't hitting hard still. Izzy didn't even necessarily fight a super tricky fight against a younger Cannonier, and he still won very easily. There's something in me that believes that Michael Venom Page is going to take even more risks than Adesanya did in his fight with Jared, and he'll be rewarded for that. I'm not going to call a finish, but MVP will make him look like he shouldn't be there. This is going to be a very easy decision for him to win. Kudos to Gary as well. He got clipped by a right hand by Michael Venom Page, but he didn't get made to look like a complete fool in this fight with MVP, since he does this to everyone. He's always emoting and making them look goofy. This fight's not going to be any different. Michael Venom Page is going to win a decision here. Geoff Neal at number 11 versus Carlos Prates at number 12. This fight will be unfolding at 170. So what we have is a field-tested boxing-heavy gatekeeper with an unpoppable chin versus a man with cigarette cardio who's going to 100% gas out within 3 rounds. And that's if the fight doesn't stop immediately. A fighter who only has finishes over incredibly finishable opponents in Carlos Prates. And these finishes have come against fighters like Neil Magny, Charles Radke, Trevin Giles, and then the Leech. Geoff Neal has a resume that's about 3 times better than Carlos Prates's, and he has more losses. Carlos Prates only has 1 loss, and I said before that losing makes fighters better. But the change that I'd really like to have seen Carlos Prates make after losing to Ian Gary is to stop smoking. If he wants to show that he's serious about this and that people's belief isn't misplaced in him, Stop chiefing those fucking darts, bro. Like, oh my god. Carlos Prates allegedly had his mother dealing with some health stuff, and that's the reason why he pulled out of a Holland fight that could have happened before the Gary one. And he's not even giving himself the best chance of being able to put on for her, while he's actively tanking his cardio, smoking a minimum of 8 cigarettes a day, or a pack whenever he's stressed out, partying with full violence in Vegas, getting drunk. He's not living like a fighter who's super committed to this. And that's part of the allure, I get it, but what we're dealing with now is Geoff Neal, who had a problem with hitting licks, and he got caught up in some nonsense, and he realized, I can't wear both of these hats. So he gave up crime to be a fighter full time. And I'm sure doing bad things that would land him in jail was kind of like a vice for him too, and he probably had withdrawals from it and everything. But Geoff Neal, he just seems to be more committed as a fighter in the UFC than Carlos Prates is a party smoky guy who really seems to only be in this to potentially land a Marlboro sponsorship. Like, what is he doing? I mean, one thing though, I kind of owe Carlos Prates my life depending on what the future held for me, because I tore my ACL last year in November, and I got a little bit depressed while I was waiting to get my surgery date, or the MRI even, because that was like a process took a while. I picked up cig smoking, and this was for like 3 months. I would smoke like 4 cigarettes a day at my breaks at my office job. I used Carlos Prates fighting at the highest level of MMA as an excuse to keep down this path, and he lost so horribly to Ian Gary, gassing out in 3 rounds without throwing a single strike. I was so repulsed by this performance that I stopped smoking cigarettes that next week, because that shit is weak as hell. I just want to feel weird. Oh, let me smoke this, man. I just want to feel weird. Neal is a for real guy, and he's not just going to break in half like Charles Radke or Trevin Giles. It's not like he hasn't met some real resistance before. Ian Gary wasn't posing any type of finishing threat, but he was duking it out with Shavkat. And Shavkat realized that he needed to wrap up that standing RNC because he realized, I'm probably not going to knock this guy out with my boxing combinations. Prates has to win via KO, and I don't think that he can knock out Geoff Neal. Not without healthy cilia in his lungs, and with weakened connective tissues from the tobacco smoking. My guess is that only one fighting nerd is going to have a successful outing on this night, and Prates and Michal Oleksiejczuk will look like they've transferred their fighting abilities to a Space Jam basketball come Saturday, and that's going to result in Geoff Neal winning via decision. Alright, so the co-main event, Lerone Murphy versus Aaron Pico. What I'm going to say right now may confuse some of you, but just let me cook. The thing that people know about Lerone Murphy on a surface level is that he's a lot like Leon Edwards. He's defensive, he's reactive, and he's technical. And he's all of these things to ensure that he can comfortably win without taking risks. Pico is coming from a great stable. He's training with Hamzat and Armin right now at this place called the Training Lab with this coach named Sam Calavita, and he operates one of the best S&C facilities in the country. And he's likely getting extra work with Armin and Hamzat in MMA contacts leading up to both of their fights on Saturday. So aside from having the desire to win, which he wants to be there, he was clamoring for an opportunity to make his debut in the UFC. He was expressing how unhappy he was to not be able to fight in Abu Dhabi because his camps are expensive, and he wanted to just do this already. Training with this dude, Coach Sam, is going to give him some serious win to be able to push a pace on Lerone Murphy. Murphy couldn't earn respect from Barbosa in their fight, and his high guard left him very vulnerable to the lead body hook of Edson that he planted into the liver in round 1. But Edson Barbosa fought such a horrible fight this night, and he just went away from everything that worked. The calf kicks and leg kicks were working. The jab of Lerone Murphy was scaring Edson Barbosa from throwing the leg kicks or the calf kicks. Even if it cost him taking a jab, Edson Barbosa's leg kicks were getting through and doing more damage to Lerone Murphy than that jab was doing to Edson Barbosa. In general, Edson, he just lacked aggression or any ability to get a bead on the jab of Lerone Murphy, and that's the reason why he kind of shut down in this fight. He got freaked out by the stick. Murphy, he doesn't sit down on any of his shots though, and he was tallying up a lot of landed strikes on Edson Barbosa, but none of them were actually effective because he doesn't sit down on his punches. This is going to keep Aaron Pico in the fight because Lerone Murphy is just going to be focused on getting ahead on points. Aaron Pico is going to be trying to put a hole in the right side of this guy's body with his lead hook, and also up top too. He's going to be trying to knock him out. It's a lot like Leon Edwards. There's really no finishing ability. Murphy also shouldn't be able to wrestle Aaron Pico as well. I have a friend, we'll call him Albacore for the sake of this story. Albacore, he's a state level wrestler in Southern California. This is the same place where Aaron Pico came up. My friend Albacore watched Aaron Pico technically fall his opponent in the championship wrestling match for all the marbles in about a couple of minutes. Albacore said that he had never seen so many pins happen so fast, and that he has a lot of respect for Aaron Pico as a wrestler, because that was one of the greatest displays of folk style wrestling that he had ever seen. The only thing that Murphy has the potential to beat Aaron on is output, and whether or not this moment is too big for him under the lights. He may just choke it like Patchy Mix or like Patricio Freire. But I'm not sure if we can run with the narrative that Bellator guys are just doomed to be mediocre, because Patricio Pitbull actually had a pretty good outing in his last one. And we've seen fighters like Michael Chandler actually have successful debuts as well. It's not like these guys have like a complete losing rate. Aaron Pico is a dude who I could totally see setting it off in his debut. It's just that he hasn't fought with UFC talent. But nobody does until they get to the UFC. And that doesn't really matter for some fighters who come through the Contender Series and just are ballers. It didn't matter for Kevin Vachejos. And I mean, Bellator is the B League, but it's a really high profile promotion, and it's not like he was just fighting on some regional scene in like some South American country. It's like the G League, and he was dropping 30, 40-point games there. The way that I'm looking at it, Lerone Murphy can't exploit any weaknesses of Pico's with anything other than his jab. Aaron Pico's going to need to shoot takedowns or find some method to shut down this jab offense of Lerone Murphy, or else he's going to lose the fight. If he does find a home for a takedown and can complete it, he'll control rounds with his wrestling. He just needs to stay on top of taking damage and not get his face busted up. I mean, power for power, Pico has him beat and possesses 2 times the finishing capability of Lerone Murphy as well. They're just risking selecting the Bellator guy always. But Murphy is not Evloev, and I was already anticipating that that fight might have been a lot more competitive than people wanted to make it out to be. I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to predict that Pico wins this via round 2 TKO. So that's going to take us on to the main event, and I've already released a video talking about how I think this fight is going to go. I guess I'll further flesh out the points right now just because we're here, you know. Fans are heavily illusioned by the perceived outcome of this fight due to the effortlessness of some of Khamzat's fights, and the fact that Dricus had to work for many of his wins in the UFC, and how he's been in a lot of grindy fights, wars of attrition Dricus du Plessis specializes in. But Dricus, he makes everybody that he fights break, and this is due to his endurance and gritty style. He's very creative, and he's violent. So this is going to be a clash of 2 very mighty humans who will be willing to die and kill each other. So this should make for a very interesting one in my opinion. People speak about this matchup as if Khamzat is willing to go to a place where Dricus isn't willing to go, and that he hasn't been before. But Dricus du Plessis, he's like the deep water CEO. And against welterweights, we've seen Khamzat Chimaev struggle. I made a video dissecting all the points that I'll make as to why I think DDP is going to win this fight. But let's just bullet everything real quick. Dricus is too physical for Khamzat Chimaev. Chimaev is still a welterweight, and as far as 2 belts goes and his plans for becoming double champion, he wants to go down instead of going up, because he just can't. Dricus is difficult to wrestle and control on the ground, and this also goes back to his physicality as well. You're not getting an excess of control time over Dricus, and I can't even imagine him getting subbed. Hopefully I don't eat these words, just because he is so large. I think that Khamzat and Khabib also know this as well, because whenever they're asked to break down the most effective strategy for Khamzat to be able to win the fight, they both said that it's the boxing, which I just don't agree with. Dricus is very creative, and he demonstrated himself to be a slicker striker than Israel Adesanya in their fight. I saw this one video of this combo that he threw. It was like a lead uppercut, like a 5, and then a rear body hook, and then a jumping, spinning back kick, like Max Holloway had landed on Justin Gaethje, but it hit Izzy just right in his breadbasket. It was great. Khamzat Chimaev is 100% going to gas out before Dricus. His prior health conditions are likely not going to allow him to develop 5-round cardio no matter where he is and what coach he's working with. It may be effective for Aaron Pico, granted he is immunocompromised or whatever the deal is with Khamzat, but Dricus he's good for 25 minutes, and he's been able to fight for 25 minutes forever. We can pretty much count on Dricus always being able to fight for 25 minutes. My inclination is that Dricus will be too strong for Khamzat to bully whenever he's going for the takedown. He isn't elevating du Plessis in the air, and the scramble produced from a takedown attempt from Khamzat is going to wear on his gas tank, and Dricus du Plessis will return to his feet and be fresher. Chimaev is not going to pace himself, and he's going to chase a finish immediately. He maybe is going to feint at range, like he did against Robert Whittaker, and he's going to shoot. If he doesn't sub Dricus du Plessis within 30 seconds of taking him down, DDP is going to punish Chimaev very badly for trying to speedrun him. The Brunson fight is really important here as well. I know what you're thinking, oh, Derek Brunson. But yeah, Derek Brunson is the only guy who tried to wrestle him, and for what it's worth, that guy has his own cardio issues, but Derek Brunson has always been a pretty solid wrestler. The method of Derek Brunson securing a takedown over DDP was a caught body kick, and du Plessis is always getting active with his lead leg, especially as of late. He's throwing that body kick, that leg kick. Chimaev can also catch his kick and transition into a single leg. I'm sure that he's probably adapted a strategy to make sure that doesn't happen though. Even though he doesn't look like the most technical or skilled fighter, he's a cerebral fighter, and he is very polished, and he's getting better Khamzat is not controlling this guy on the floor, and DDP is knocking out Khamzat Chimaev. So I'm going to predict Dricus du Plessis winning via round 4 TKO. This is going to be my recap of the predictions that I've just made right now. Dana White's Contender Series is going to be returning tomorrow, or today I guess, since it's Tuesday, huh? Anyways, I'm going to be reviewing the fights that I watch and also who ends up getting a contract. We're going to give short synopsises of everything. That will be tomorrow's upload. This entire page is going to be dedicated to my flyweight goat, Deiveson Figueiredo. This dude had the Apex so lit in 2020, and he was just down to defend his belt whenever. They were like, yo, do you want to catch another body, Deiveson? And he was like, yeah, man, let's do it. And then Brandon Moreno just kind of ruined everything. But even still, they have some really classic fights. I did really enjoy watching Deiveson Figueiredo just maul everybody in this division, though, for a little bit. Alex Perez, Benavidez, those fights were so funny, so violent. It was so quiet in the Apex, too. I'm going to miss the old Apex. They put all the seats in there. Shit ain't right. Alright, you guys. So those are going to be my predictions for this week. Let me know what you guys think about the picks. Please do like, comment, and subscribe if you made it to this point. I will catch you fellas tomorrow in the next upload. Or later today. Blah.